Hey everyone, Mr. Harvey here. Let's continue our lecture on the Protestant Reformation, ladies and gentlemen. So, we've talked about the German Reformation, we've talked about Calvinism, the Counter Reformation, some of the art during this time. Let's finish off this chapter, ladies and gentlemen, chapter 3, and talk about the impact and the effects of the Reformation. Okay, here we go. Now, one of the biggest impacts of the Protestant Reformation are the religious changes that we're going to be seeing. And we're going to see in the next chapter some of these effects really take shape in Europe, especially the religious wars. But some of the religious changes, ladies and gentlemen, is obviously we're going to have the number of clergy, Catholic clergy decline. We're going to see a decline of Catholicism throughout Europe. We're going to see some major changes when it comes to the way churches are, decorated, the way churches look. We're going to see, especially in Protestant churches, no more elaborate paintings, pictures in the church, in churches. Okay, we're going to start to see the worship in vernacular, right? Not Latin in many different churches, especially those Protestant churches. Okay, no more obligatory fasts. Okay, clergy are going to be allowed to marry, pay taxes, could be punished. So some major changes that we're going to be seeing to Christian doctrine within the Reformation. And a lot of these changes we're going to be seeing in the Protestant churches. Okay, in the Protestant churches. All right, let's continue. Another big change we're going to be seeing, ladies and gentlemen, with the Reformation is going to be in education. And education is going to be paramount, especially to Protestantism. All right, we're going to see many Protestant schools start to kind of rise during this time. And in these Protestant schools, they are going to implement many humanistic reforms within these Protestant schools. And it kind of makes sense because the Protestant Reformation itself was very much influenced by humanism, especially the humanism we saw in the Northern Renaissance in Northern Europe. Okay, and a great example of this is going to be with Martin Luther. Okay, Martin Luther is going to implement historical studies at the University of Wittenberg in Northern Germany. So we're going to see, things like rhetoric, poetry, studying the ancient Greeks and Romans, dance, art, humanistic, and some of the principles of humanism, right? Seeking truth, seeking knowledge. A lot of humanism is going to start to be indoctrinated into the school systems in Europe, especially Protestant schools. Okay, very important. And excuse me, many Protestant reformers, ladies and gentlemen, are going to become humanists as well. So not just believing in Protestantism, but they're going to be humanists and continue to push forward humanism and Protestantism and these ideologies throughout Europe. Okay, that's going to be very important. Another really important ideal for us to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that I did not list on this slide is reading and the importance of reading. Okay, Protestants are going to be very, and especially in their school system, literacy is going to be a big part of Protestantism. And that makes sense, ladies and gentlemen, because we know the Bible is the sole authority of Protestants. And well, in order to, understand the Bible, you got to learn to read the Bible. You got to learn to read, okay? And so literacy is going to be so key to the education and culture and religious doctrine of Protestantism, okay? Very important. All right, let's continue. All right, and something that's important, excuse me, something that's really important for us to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is that humanist culture and learning is kind of really helped facilitate the Reformation. We talked about that. One of the key causes to the Reformation was the Northern Renaissance, right? That very famous quote that we know: Erasmus laid the egg that Luther hatched. Okay, but this is going to kind of turn into this little feedback cycle in that humanism helped facilitate the Reformation, and in turn, the Reformation is going to continue to promote humanist ideals, and so they're really going to, influence one another, and both, Reformation ideals, these new ideas concerning religion, and humanist ideals are going to just spread throughout Europe. Okay, very important for us to understand. All right, let's talk about women, ladies and gentlemen. So for my class, we know when we talk about women is a really important theme within European history, especially something that we can see on the AP exam. So Let's make sure we pay attention and have these notes organized. Whether you organize these notes by a different ink color, or however you want to organize these notes, we need to make sure that we note the importance of women in our notes. Okay, here we go. There's going to be tremendous, tremendous, tremendous impact upon women, ladies and gentlemen, in the Reformation. Okay, one of the most important impacts that we're going to be seeing is that the Reformation is going to challenge this traditional view of women, in which they were viewed as temptresses that could make a man sin through sexual activity. Right, this idea that women are supposed to be virgins. Okay, and this is important for us to understand, ladies and gentlemen, because we are seeing with Protestantism different ideas concerning religion. Well, we're starting to see some different ideas concerning gender as well. Okay, so another big change that we're going to be seeing during this time, ladies and gentlemen, is that women are going to be viewed as indispensable companions. Okay, Martin Luther was deeply in love with his wife. Developing a loving relationship with your significant other, your wife. This is going to be very important, an important part of Protestant marital culture. Okay, that women are indispensable companions. Women are, an indispensable part of their society. So a different view towards women, and this makes sense because we're seeing different views towards religion. Okay, and we're going to see, some really radical new views: the sacredness of the home, of the family. Okay, having a companionate marriage. Okay, and we're going to talk about some of these differences concerning marriage. This is going to be different. Okay, previous marriage was viewed as mainly an economic necessity, viewed in economic terms. Well, now we're seeing Protestants, having a companionate marriage, marrying for love, having a relationship for love, caring for one another. Those are going to be some important values within marriage as opposed to money and economics. Okay, so this companionate marriage emphasized this loving relationship between a man and a woman, that they love each other. Sex is going to be an act that is much more, that we're going to see more liberal ideas concerning sex and sexual relations, an act to be enjoyed by a man and woman, a way to show their love between one another, not just, for procreation, okay, and having children. All right. We're going to see in Protestant culture and Protestant societies greater rights for women, especially with divorce and, remarriage. So what's important for us to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is we are seeing some radical new views with religion, and at the same time, Protestants are having radical new views concerning women, marriage, okay? So that all relates to one another, and that's important for us to understand, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Protestant churches were much more willing to allow divorce, okay? Really important. But perhaps one of the most important effects of Protestantism, ladies and gentlemen, especially when it comes to women, especially when it comes to gender, is that women are going to become more literate in the vernacular, all right? Protestants are going to be teaching and encouraging women to learn to read. Why? Well, the Bible is their sole authority. All right, so women are going to become literate, which is a game changer. We are starting to see women be, more, accepted into the intellectual sphere of Europe. Now, we're not going to see, widespread education yet. We're not going to see, women allowed in universities and women, going to school. But this is a very much an important step in that direction, that women are becoming literate, which is really, really, really really important for us, okay? And obviously women are becoming literate, like I just said, because they have to learn to read the Bible, okay? And that's a very important part of Protestantism because the Bible is the sole authority. So that's important for us, ladies and gentlemen, okay? And as they read the Bible, they're going to find biblical passages that made clear their equality to men in the eyes of God, and they're going to be, reading things for the first time, okay? And that's going to kind of open up this entire new intellectual world for women. And we're going to start to see, in the 1600s, especially in the 1700s, we're going to start to see equality, feminism, equal rights. We're going to start seeing that become more and more prevalent amongst women and amongst, politics and some of these different areas that we're going to be talking about. Okay, so the equality in feminism and women getting, the right to vote and participate in politics, that's going to be something that we're going to be seeing in the future. And it's directly going to be rooted to this as women are reading more. Okay, very important for us. All right, Marriage, just like I said, ladies and gentlemen, okay? And let's kind of link this back to the Renaissance, okay? Marriage, all right, and during the Protestant Reformation is going to be very similar to the Renaissance, okay? Men and women in Western Europe are typically going to marry a little bit at later ages than in Eastern Europe, and we'll talk a little bit about that kind of the marriage, norms of Eastern Europe. Men were typically a little bit older than women, mid to late 20s. Women in their early mid 20s. Again, like we saw in the Renaissance, high mortality rates amongst children, high rates of illegitimate children, right? Children are expensive, and for peasants and people of lower socioeconomic status, having a child, unintentionally was often economically disastrous for them. And one way that they would kind of get out of that is kind of abandoning or in this very radical cases, having to kind of kill their child and get rid of their child, right? And high rates of illegitimate children. Children, we do not have birth control. There's not a fundamental understanding of science and the science behind sex and having children. And so there are high rates of children who of illegitimate children, of people kind of having kids and it's not intended. All right, so again, kind of very similar to the Renaissance. But we'll see that change, ladies and gentlemen, as there's a greater understanding, as we start to see, notions of birth control, as we start to see, a greater understanding of the science and the biology behind having children. Okay, family size, very similar to the Renaissance. The nuclear family, very important, especially in Western Europe. Okay, families had children frequently, typically because there were high rates of child mortality. Okay, children died. Part of this is because there's not a lack of modern sanitation, modern science. Okay, birth is a very stressful event both for the mother and the child, and with a lack of science, child mortality, there was a high rate of it. It was common. It was much more common than it is today. Okay, birth control, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, the Catholic Church was opposed typically to birth control, and pretty much during this time, the only kind of the dominant birth control that there was male withdrawal from a woman, and other techniques were not really useful. But it's important for us to understand that there really wasn't during this time a clear understanding of birth control, a clear understanding of the science behind and the biology behind having children. Okay, and they don't know this yet. As we see the scientific revolution kind of take shape, as they know more about human biology and the human body, we are going to start to see some of the more modern forms of birth control that we have today, ladies and gentlemen, start to enter society, okay, and start to become more prevalent. All right, wet nursing. Okay, this is where a woman is breastfeeding typically a baby or someone else's baby. During this time, the church and doctors were opposed to wet nursing infants and having a shared milk supply amongst multiple babies. But this practice was actually very popular, typically among the upper class who could afford this, and among lower socioeconomic groups. And this was definitely a very dominant practice during the 1500s, 1600s, and late 1400s. Okay, wet nursing. Okay, let's move on. All right, loving families. Well, during this time, ladies and gentlemen, family life was really, really different than kind of what we see today. Okay, if today when we look on these families during the Reformation and during the Renaissance, relations in families kind of seemed cold and distant. Well, part of that was child mortality. Parents didn't sometimes expect their kids to live very long, and so they would kind of have a different relationship than today. Children, when they're, in between the ages of 8 and 13, could be, sent to schools, sent to apprenticeships, sent to another family to work, sent somewhere to kind of bring money to the family. Widowers and widows typically, remarried frequently, if someone died, and it was mainly because of economic motivations, right? Getting two incomes as opposed to one stabilized the family financially. And so family life was what I'm trying to get at. And, the main point of this slide, ladies and gentlemen, is that family life was very, very, very different. Okay, it was very different. And we're going to see kind of as we go throughout this class, we're only in chapter 3, the evolution of the family, the evolution of family life. Okay, it was going to drastically change as we kind of go throughout this class. Okay, and another, and this kind of isn't like a big change from today. We do see, marriages with extreme differences. They're just not as common as they were back then, but that is still something that we do see today, for sure. Marriages with extreme, age differences. But it was very common back, back during this time. Okay, so some differences, but there are some, there's some shades of continuity with this. Okay, pretty interesting. Okay, let's talk about the effects of the Reformation, ladies and gentlemen. The big one that we really need to know is that the unity of Western Christianity was shattered forever. Okay, now there are Protestants, now there are Catholics. Okay, and it's not just everyone in Europe is Catholic. All right, that's a big difference, ladies and gentlemen, and very important for us. Okay, religious enthusiasm is rekindled. We are going to see a huge upsurge in religious energy during this time. A lot of people are going to become religiously zealous, trying to spread the gospel, and we're going to see fights over this. But religious enthusiasm is back, and that's we're going to see that especially in the wars. The abuses of the Catholic Church are going to be remedied, right? Indulgences gone. They're going to try to get rid of some of those corruptions that they, especially in the Catholic Counter-Reformation, that they were, really going after. But the biggest effect of the Reformation that we're going to be studying the entire next chapter, chapter 4, are the religious wars, 30 Years' War, the French Wars of Religion. We're going to see England and Spain go at it with the Spanish Armada. There are going to be some huge religious wars, and that's what we're going to focus on in the next chapter, okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for chapter 3. I will see you next time for chapter 4, where we talk about the religious wars. Thank you so much. Take care.